me. A rooted classroom plants purpose, cultivates service, and grows communities. And mine just so happens to smell like show pigs and fresh cut flowers. I love my job at Morgan County High School. I teach intro to ag science, horticulture, forestry, and floral design, and no 2 days are the same. And really, no 2 hours are the same. One moment, I could be with students after school doctoring 6 show pigs, while the next moment, I have my students at the state capitol meeting with their representatives. We could be on our way to National FFA Convention to take kids on a plane for the first time to Indianapolis, Indiana. Or we could be at a wedding venue setting up wedding flowers. Or we might be back at school for student-teacher swap dress-up day. Can you pick me out of the crowd? I'm the one in the middle. I could have taken the easy way out and dressed up like one of the girls, but one of the football coaches actually came to me and he said, you could dress up like your ag mechanics boys. And so this is what the kids in my classroom look like every single day. Now, while every day looks very different, my goal for those days is the same, and that is to make productive and involved members of their community and teach them how they can use their skills to serve others. And that is where this story begins. So my route to education is a little unconventional. Went to the University of Georgia to major in animal science because I liked animals. And I met a girl in college who suggested that I go work at Teton Valley Ranch Camp in Du Bois, Wyoming. And so I spent 4 summers in Wyoming teaching kids from all over the country how to ride horses. And I loved the chaos of camp. I loved the students and working with students. And so when I came back to UGA after my first summer there, I was talking to my advisor, and he suggested, why don't you be an ag teacher? It was a perfect way to combine my 2 passions of agriculture and students, and I never looked back. Now, when I first went to Morgan County, I was asked that question. The first couple years of teaching are all the same. You're all working on lesson plans, trying to keep your head above the water, working on curriculum, trying to manage classrooms. But I was asked this question. If we were to come to you tomorrow and tell you we were closing your program, who would fight for you? They even challenged us to write it down. And it wasn't a threat, but a way to make us think about the relevance of our program within the community and if the community saw value in what we were doing. And it made me think, what am I doing that's worth fighting for? Now, it took me back because in year 4 of my teaching career, on the very second day of school, I was fighting for something different. I was told I had a brain tumor, an acoustic schwannoma to be exact, and I spent my 8 weeks of that year recovering from brain surgery. And the tumor was wrapped around my audio nerve, and so during the surgery, I lost a little vision in my right eye, a little facial paralysis, and I have absolutely no hearing in my right ear. However, if you teach high school, only hearing half of what they say is a blessing. But that moment, when we were asked this question of who would fight for you, it took me back to this moment. And made me think of when I've been asked personally and professionally of a moment when I had to fight. And so I want to ask you that question. How are you rooted in service? And what's something that you're willing to fight for? Now, all of you have pretty different answers to that question. You're all in different areas of school buildings and different subject matters, but public school teachers share one common purpose, and that is to protect public schools so that we protect our students. Now, the fact of the matter is public school enrollment is dropping. There are 1.2 million fewer students enrolled in public schools than there were pre-pandemic. In Georgia, we educate roughly 1.7 million students, but we've seen that shift in enrollment too. And enrollment is oxygen, especially in rural districts. Enrollment determines transportation, it determines bus routes, it determines staffing, and the very programs that keep our small towns vibrant. You know, for far too long, we have done amazing things in our classroom, and we just expected everybody to know what was going on. So I think it's time for something different. It's time for us to step outside of our fence rows. American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall uses this phrase to encourage farmers to step outside of the fence rows of their farms and see the bigger picture. Focus on policy and public perception. And because far too often, farmers are only concerned about what's happening on their farms. And teachers fall into that trap too. We're far too concerned about what's happening inside our classroom to see the bigger picture in education. And it's time that we step outside of the walls of our classroom to inform our communities so that our employers and our neighbors and our county commissioners see the relevance, rigor, and return on investment that public schools have to offer. And this is where my platform as Georgia Teacher of the Year came from. Rooted classrooms that are planning purpose, that are cultivating service, and that are growing communities. Now, when I started in Morgan County, I was teaching ag mechanics. And there were 2 ag teachers, both female, and our classes were 72% male. And so I went to my CTA director, and I said, I'd really like to draw in a different demographic of kids to our ag program. Can I start a floral design class? And she agreed if I could address a couple barriers. First of all, it was April, and if there are any counselors in the room, you know, part of the problem, we had already gone through course selections, and so I had to find kids that would take the class, but that part was easy. The second thing was money. Floral design is an extremely expensive class to teach. But I told her, if you can give me $1,000, I know that I can turn this into a successful school-based enterprise, and I promise I will not ask for another dime. So she agreed, and she let me, we helped order the supplies, and she let me teach the class that coming year. Now, we started raising money in a couple different ways. We started a subscription program. So people in the community paid up front to be a part of our floral subscription program, and then we would deliver flowers to their door once a month. Well, delivery was our next challenge. So I went to our special needs department, and I asked if they would be interested in helping deliver our flowers. It was a win-win for everybody. Our flowers were getting delivered, and these students were getting opportunities to connect with their community and work on their communication skills while also seeing a job that might be a real possibility for them in the future. Now, the first wedding that we did was for our school counselor, Miss Murdoch. I thought this might be an easy way in, this low risk situation. And so my students and I took on the wedding, and I took them to the venue to install the flowers on the day of the wedding. And the look on their face when Miss Murdoch walked in and saw the reception face for the first time, it was priceless, and it was real. And that's the moment where I realized if we're planning purpose, we're turning these careers into calling, and we're turning earning into impacting. Now, fast forward 10 years, our floral design program is thriving. We went from 28% female to 44% female. We grew from 36 subscribers to 75 subscribers. We do 10 to 12 real weddings a year, and I'm proud to say I have never asked for another dime, and our program brings in about $60,000 a year. We've also done large events like the University of Georgia's College of Ag Alumni Dinner, the UGA Harvest Celebration, everyone's birthdays and baby showers, and all of the sports banquets. But what I started to notice is when parents would come into the school for open house or registration night, they all started to say the same thing. I wish we had this class when I was in high school. And so we started hosting community classes. And so once a month, we were hosting these classes for the people in the community to come in and learn what the kids were learning in school. Well, the cool thing about these community classes was the demand for the classes got so high that I couldn't keep up. And so I started to toss the ball over to my students to lead the classes. And they were then able to raise money for things to like going to National FFA Convention, or I even had a student who this past show season hosted floral classes so she could raise the money for her pigs' show feed. Now, speaking of pigs, we just finished our second season in our Morgan Agricultural Learning Lab. This is a barn built for students who don't have a place to keep livestock animals at their home. It gives them a location to keep them at school, providing equitable opportunities for all students. And we were able to raise $1 million for this project because the community saw value in what we were doing. Now, for the past 5 years, we've done what I like to call Sophomore Serve, where every sophomore in the community goes out. Picture 250 sophomores in matching t-shirts, working at food banks, clearing trails at local state parks, working with nursing homes, or even in our historic cemetery. But they all started to ask these questions. You know, what do we do here anyway? How can I help in the future? Now, more important than the programs that we've created are the students that they have impacted. I'd like to introduce you to a few of them. This is Jake. Every teacher has a Jake. Jake was that kid who would rather do just about anything than sit in a desk and write an essay. And I spent more time defending Jake Ferguson to all the other teachers in my school, more than I have spent defending any other student. But it was because I saw something different in Jake. When you gave him a welder, or you gave him a wrench, it was pure focus. And that young ag mechanics teacher, he was my ag mechanics hero. He came in every day and asked what he could do to help, never undermined me in front of the other kids. He graduated with a technical college credit in welding. He bought a house at 19, and he probably makes more money than me. But when he got married, his fiance called me, and she said, Jake doesn't care about any aspect of the wedding planning, except for the fact that he wants you to do the flowers. And so this is Jake and I on his wedding day, the man, the myth, the legend, Jake Ferguson, who made mullets cool before mullets were cool. Now, it goes a lot deeper than that, because I would also like to introduce you to Joy. Joy was that student who jumped into my floral design class because she needed an elective. She jumped in and did a wedding installation on a school bus. She jumped in and helped with community classes. But the next semester, when her brother was shot and killed, she called me and asked me if I would help her make her brother's casket spray. And that moment hit me hard, because in her time, in her darkest hour, she thought of me, and she thought of my class, and she thought of the skills that she had learned in a way that she could use those skills to honor someone that she loved. Now, not every kid that leaves my classroom is going to be a florist. Not everyone is going to be a forester or work in a greenhouse. They are going to learn skills that they will use for the rest of their life. Now, we know that a student gets hired because of their knowledge and their skills. And they get fired because of their attitudes and their habits. And that is why this is so important. People are trusting us with their wedding day, the most important day of someone's life. And it is our job to execute that vision, talk about problem solving and collaboration and adaptability. And one of the things that I've started to work on in my classroom is urgency. Because if you've ever walked down the hall behind a group of high schoolers, you know that urgency is lacking. But when we're working on real events with real deadlines and real budgets, there is no, I'll finish this tomorrow. And so teaching students these skills that they can then use to serve their communities is what I see as so important. And why we can use these skills, how we can teach these students to use these skills to benefit their communities. Now, the joy is in the harvest. As a high school teacher, I get to see that harvest a little faster than some of you. But man, does it take everybody. It takes educational agencies and policymakers to clear the fields. It takes our community members and our parents to help prepare that soil, provide the soil. It takes our elementary and our middle school teachers to amend the soil and lay the foundations for education. It takes secondary teachers to plant that seed that sparks a new ambition. And it takes our colleges and technical schools to water and fertilize those skills to make them prepared for the workforce. And our communities to give those plants and those seeds and the students spaces to grow. Now, when we grow our communities, we're growing ecosystems that our students want to come back to. Now, I do want to say thank you to so many people in the room who helped participate in our first Georgia Public Schools Day of Service. And I'm hoping that this is something that will be a lasting legacy that will continue for years to come, because we're teaching students how to use their skills to service their communities. Now, I'll go back to that question, that who would fight for you question. 10 years ago, I wasn't sure, but today there is no doubt. It would be every parent who's trusted us with their daughter's wedding flowers. It would be every family who sat on their porch and waited to see which special needs student would deliver their flowers. It would be Jake, who started to thrive when education met him where he was. It would be Joy, who learned that she could use her skills to honor someone that she loved. And it would be every farmer, florist, employer, nonprofit in our community who have seen our students show up not just with work ethic, but with empathy. And so it makes the years spent in a rooted classroom, I just turned it off, sorry. In a rooted classroom, planning purpose, cultivating service, and growing communities worth it. Because people aren't fighting for me because I'm an ag teacher. People are fighting for me because they've seen what public schools are capable of. And everyone started to pick up the shovel and help us start digging. Thank you.